Hello, and welcome to the Weird Around Illinois podcast. Today we're going to talk about the thing that got us into hunting for cryptids and ghosts and UFOs. That would be the paranormal television show. There have been a lot of paranormal TV shows, and we've seen a lot of paranormal TV shows. And today we're going to talk about some of our favorites and some of our favorite scenes from some of our favorites and how those things influenced us and got us interested into this weird world that we are into. I will start by talking about a show that came out before either of you were born, that really got me started on this path. It was a show called In Search Of, and it was hosted by Leonard Nimoy, who of course played Spock on the original Star Trek. I was pretty much hooked at that because, Star Trek hadn't been on for a while, and it was the first time I'd ever seen anyone from Star Trek in something else. So I was just, my mind was blown. And here I had Mr. Spock telling us all about haunted ships and UFO sightings and Bigfoot and all these wonderful things, and that I had never heard of before, and he was making them sound so real, applying legitimate science to these fantastic tales. And then I kind of forgot about it for a while, until another show came out, it was, I want to say, early 2000s, called Monster Quest. And this one was specifically focused on cryptids, and they would go to different locations looking for different cryptids, and they would send hunters out there looking for them. And it's where we start meeting some of the people who start showing up in all these later shows, like the Bigfoot footprint guy, Dr. Melman, I think it was. And I love just seeing scientific methods applied to the search for cryptids.
Cool.
And that's what launched into some of these other shows that you guys started watching with me, like Expedition Bigfoot, which is really the show that kind of launched us, I think.
Yeah, it really is.
That the cast of characters on that show was so perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, and I talk about it in the past tense, but I think it's coming out again in April. I think there's a new season coming.
Oh yeah, there is.
Yeah, but you've got Bryce, who is just my hero.
Yeah.
The guy who sits behind the computer and looks at the hidden cameras and does the internet research, and when he goes out to search for Bigfoot, he does it in a car with cameras mounted on all four corners.
Yeah, I remember one episode, he was like in a helicopter, he
was
just traveling across a forest, watching people below climbing and going throughout the forest.
Yeah.
That was great.
I think one of my favorite Bryce moments was when he had, Russell, who's like his field guy, who we'll talk about in a minute. But Russell's out there hanging from a tree trying to adjust a camera. And Bryce is sitting in his luxury cabin. It's like, can you move it a little to the left for us?
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And Russell is great too, because Russell is like the survivalist of the group, and he's the one who puts on like the ghillie suit so that he's indistinguishable from the underbrush and goes crawling out into the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And he also coined one of our favorite catchphrases, which is of course, "woof."
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the man who taught us that when you are cornered by a Bigfoot or you think anything is attacking you from the woods, the best thing you can do is stand your ground and say, "woof."
Yeah.
In a distressed way specifically, according to him.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if we could put the clip into the video, but it was great when we first heard it.
And broken sticks all over.
There was just this little edge of panic in his voice that you could hear.
Yeah.
And he always gets himself in these horrible situations too, where he's like at the bottom of a ravine and he's hearing noises on either side of him, and he's always so stunned, like, well, we're gonna have to find a way out of here. I don't know why we got into this position, but this is dangerous. This is really dangerous right now. The other two, Maria and who's the other guy's name? I'm trying to think of it.
Ronnie.
Ronnie, yeah, Ronnie and Maria. They're entertaining as well. She's the closest thing to a skeptic in the group, I think. She's a primatologist, and she requires a bit more scientific proof than your Bigfoot enthusiast does. Expedition Bigfoot was definitely our favorite, but another one that has to be way up there, for me at least, is Mountain Monsters.
Yeah.
They won me over with one of the early episodes when they heard something moving in the woods, and suddenly these 5 gentlemen of the woods just took out their weapons and started firing blindly into the woods at whatever was out there. I was all in at that point.
Yeah.
And they tried to tone it down later. I don't think they fire a weapon for like the next 3 seasons after that, but the damage was already done for me. I was all in. The late great Trapper leading the team, and Huckleberry in charge of security, and Buck. They eventually called him an expert caller, but he was originally the rookie on the team.
Yeah.
And of course, Jeff, the researcher, who seems to dig out eyewitnesses from out of the woodwork whenever they need them.
Yeah.
And of course, Wild Bill and Willie, the trap makers and general nutcases.
Yeah, I think Willie is my favorite just because he makes all the traps.
Yeah.
I remember recently I watched an old episode. He just made a electric cage to trap Mothman, basically.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it really made no sense, but I was really fascinated by it. It was an interesting theory.
Yeah, and it begs the question that I know I've brought up several times before. Do they take those traps down when they're done?
I'm not sure.
If we were to wander through, West Virginia, are we going to be in danger of falling into one of Willie's traps?
I wish we checked when we were in the Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah. Now, the knock on Mountain Monsters, and we've encountered this ourselves when we've watched it with other people, is, the claim is it's all fake. And I could see why people would say that. It seems very contrived, and some of the acting seems kind of weak from time to time. But they actually got into a huge fight with another show, Finding Bigfoot, I think it was, when they got into this Twitter battle or something where,
no.
Yeah, Finding Bigfoot people called them fakes and said everything was staged, and then they said that you should change. Mountain Monsters came back and said you should change your show's name to Losing Bigfoot because you guys have never found anything in 5 seasons.
What a roast!
Yeah, so it got pretty nasty between those two groups. But it's whether you believe what they're finding or not, it's just a really entertaining show. Now, there was a show called Alaska Monsters, which was basically a spin-off of Mountain Monsters, where they put together a ragtag crew of Alaskans to look for all these cryptids that supposedly live up there. And
they're gonna look for the Yeti.
Yeah, the Yeti, the Bigfoot, the Wild Man, which is another term for Bigfoot. Again, there's 100 different terms for Bigfoot. Finding Bigfoot, the other show that I mentioned. I don't know that you guys have watched that show. I watched it a few times, a number of episodes, and the thing that got to me about it is it was very repetitive. It was always the camera close up on the person's face in the woods with the, "Did you hear that?"
Yeah.
And, somebody would do a wood knock, and somebody would hear a wood knock, and then, did you hear that? Did everybody hear that?
Yeah, that's kind of how Expedition Bigfoot was, too, in a way.
It was.
Except for the occasional things like helicopters randomly in the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd have to assume that Finding Bigfoot was the less comedy version of Expedition Bigfoot.
Yeah, exactly. It was Expedition Bigfoot without those wonderful Bryce and Russell moments.
Yeah.
And then there was a cluster of ghost shows, and I've always kind of avoided ghost shows, and here's my reason why. Strangely enough, a coworker expressed this to me recently, and he put it in terms that I really agreed with. He said, if you're hunting for a ghost, you can't be scared of ghosts. And these people seem terrified when something falls off a shelf, or they get a heat sensor reading, or they hear something on the spirit box. I mean, these people are legitimately terrified.
Yeah, if they get one aggressive knock on like a door next to them or something, they start running out the door immediately.
A paranormal show that I did like a lot that had some ghosts in it was Paranormal Caught on Camera. It's very similar to another show called Strange Evidence, but Paranormal Caught on Camera is the one that just shows you the video and basically talks about all the creepy things that could have caused the video.
Yeah, that one more just makes a lot of wild theories on it, in my opinion. Whereas Strange Evidence is probably one of my favorite paranormal or ghost shows specifically, because it goes into detail of like what actually could have happened. It does realistic research tests.
See, there was Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch, which is actually a kind of a derivative show of Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, which I don't know. I've enjoyed it, but it's more of a treasure hunting show so far than a paranormal show.
Yeah, what I'm noticing is that the names are getting a little bit repetitive.
Yeah. Well, here's an original one for you though. There's Ancient Aliens.
Yes. See, that one goes like back to ancient times, different areas of like maybe pyramids, different things granted into the walls, and they once more make some wild theories out of it. It's something.
And they've got my favorite physicist on there. They've got Travis.
Oh, really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he joins in the later seasons, I think. He's one of the experts. I do enjoy that show. I mean, that's another one that's got some really wild theories. But, at least they've got a little science to back it up, and, they're talking about stuff that happened when none of us were here, so you can't really completely debunk what they're saying either, because, who knows what happened 200,000 years ago. There was a show called The Unexplained, which features another Star Trek veteran, William Shatner, and
I remember that one.
Yeah, I enjoy it just because William Shatner's another one of those really interesting dudes who I think I could read a phone book.
Yeah.
But that show it is very reminiscent of the old In Search Of, where he just looks at all these different phenomenon from around the world and talks about them and interviews people and does some light scientific investigation. There's a show called Aliens in Alaska. That one, I believe, is the show that has me looking at trees every night. There's this creepy episode on there where this woman says that there are these little creatures that live in the trees in Alaska, and nobody ever looks up, so they don't see them. And she claimed they were in the trees every night when she looked up, and then suddenly all the trees on the block died.
Yikes.
Yeah, so every night I'm out looking at trees.
Too bad we're not in Alaska.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Maybe after all the trees died up there, they came down here. Who knows? The Alaska Triangle was another entertaining show. Alaska just seems like a really weird place after watching these shows.
Yeah, I think the reason why most people aim for Alaska is because the population is way lower. You know, there's gonna be less people to disprove that stuff, and it's an easy target, to say the least.
It's an easy target, but it's also a very easy place for a cryptid to live, I would think.
That's true, if they're able to withstand the coldness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the last one I had on my list was Destination Unknown, which I keep seeing ads for the show, but I've actually never seen it yet. It looks like a good show, and it looks like he covers a lot of different ground. Some of it is cryptid, some of it is aliens, some of it is just, ancient mystery and things like that. But probably worth a watch at some point.
One more that we should talk about is These Woods Are Haunted.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
That one we watched maybe like a month ago, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere around that.
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
I gotta say, I do love that show. I feel like The thing that frustrates me about it is they keep showing these locations that I've been to before I was hunting cryptids. And so, you know, they'll show like somewhere in Iowa where this Bigfoot apparently lives. I'm like, I stayed there for like 2 weeks. You're telling me that there was a Bigfoot right in those woods?
Main reason why I like that one also is because they have great like visual acting and that kind of stuff. I mean, the acting isn't great, but it's a good addition compared to other ones.
For this type of show, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I love that it's a reenactment. You know, rather than just giving you facts and figures and whatnot, they actually do a fairly high quality staged reenactment of what people see. Well, that's all we have for you tonight, but if you have any shows that we've missed on cryptids or ghosts or aliens that you'd like to share with us, by all means, leave it in the comments. And if you have any shared memories of these shows that you'd like to talk about, we'd love to hear about that as well. Thank you for listening, and thank you for subscribing.